Michael Joseph Jackson and Farrah Lenny Fawcett rose from middle-class American families into global fame, one through a family band that evolved into a solo career, the other through modeling and television that led to film work. Jackson's siblings shaped early opportunities, while Fawcett's Texas upbringing and partnership with actor Lee Majors positioned her within network television. Both maintained close circles that managed access and publicity in the final years, when health and privacy became priorities. Jackson's public contributions spanned popular music, dance, and the music video era, with albums that defined commercial pop and collaborations that crossed genres. Fawcett's impact rested on a single television season that became iconic, followed by stage and film roles that pushed past an early public image. Each navigated controversies attached to intense fame, with legal scrutiny shaping Jackson's later narrative, and with Fawcett reframing celebrity through selective projects and documentary work. Both declined in health in the late 2000s. Jackson died in late June of 2009 in Los Angeles after an acute medical crisis at home. Fawcett died earlier the same day in Santa Monica after a lengthy illness. Documented in a widely viewed account of treatment and advocacy, the proximity of the deaths shaped media attention, with Fawcett's passing initially noted, then overshadowed by the scale of Jackson's news. Fawcett's funeral service took place in Los Angeles, with interment at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. Jackson's remains were later entombed at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, following a large public memorial in downtown Los Angeles. The same-day endings illustrated divergent public images, one grounded in television iconography and independent roles, the other defined by unprecedented musical reach, each remembered through distinct memorials in greater Los Angeles. Carrie Frances Fisher and Mary Frances, known professionally as Debbie Reynolds, formed one of Hollywood's most recognized mother and daughter relationships. Fisher grew up amid studio lots and stage rehearsals, the child of Reynolds and singer Eddie Fisher. The family's public life included divorce and remarriage headlines, which Fisher later addressed through essays and novels. As adults, mother and daughter lived near each other in Beverly Hills, maintaining close daily contact and professional support across decades. Fisher's public contributions included a defining science fiction role, acclaimed writing, and uncredited script work that shaped numerous films. She spoke candidly about health and recovery, presenting these subjects with wit and precision. Reynolds' career began in the studio musical era, with celebrated performances in film and later on stage and television. Beyond acting, Reynolds preserved Hollywood history by collecting and auctioning costumes and props, advocating for film heritage when studios divested iconic materials. In late December of 2016, Fisher experienced a medical emergency while traveling, then died in Los Angeles. The following day, Reynolds suffered a stroke at home and died in Los Angeles after telling family she wished to be with her daughter. The consecutive losses drew global attention, noting the unusual closeness of the dates and the long public record of their intertwined lives. Family organized joint arrangements that reflected that closeness. Fisher's ashes were placed in a keepsake urn, and Reynolds was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale after a memorial attended by colleagues and fans. The mother and daughter narrative, long visible in Hollywood history, concluded with adjacent remembrances that acknowledged individual achievements and a shared legacy of performance and preservation. Robin McLaurin Williams and Betty Joan Persky, known as Lauren Bacall, emerged from different coasts and eras. Yet each built strong professional communities and lasting friendships across film and theater. Williams trained at Juilliard, forming bonds with fellow performers who supported early stand-up and television work. Bacall came from New York, modeling to the Warner Brothers lot with formative relationships including marriage to Humphrey Bogart and collaborations with directors who shaped her screen presence. Both maintained close ties to family and colleagues in later years, balancing privacy with public obligations. Williams transformed American screen and stage comedy by merging improvisation, character work, and dramatic depth, moving from television breakout to acclaimed film roles. He supported charity initiatives and entertained service members, integrating philanthropy into a demanding career. Bacall's contributions defined a model of cool restraint and intelligence in classic cinema, later extending to Broadway and character roles that sustained visibility over decades. Each navigated the demands of celebrity, with Williams openly addressing health and recovery, and Bacall guarding personal life while mentoring younger actors. In mid-August of 2014, Williams died at home in Northern California, following a period of significant health challenges that included a complex neurological diagnosis identified after death. The next day, Bacall died in New York after a stroke at her residence. Their departures, one day apart, prompted reflections on comedy's capacity for empathy and on the durability of classic filmcraft. Williams was cremated and his ashes were scattered in the San Francisco Bay, near the communities that supported his career. Bacall was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, near the resting place of Humphrey Bogart and other colleagues from the studio era. The consecutive passings linked distinct traditions in American screen history, pairing a transformative modern comedian with a standard bearer of Golden Age poise. Olivia Mary de Havilland and Carmine Ulrico, known professionally as John Saxon, belonged to different generations and circles, yet each built durable careers through discipline and range. De Havilland's early life in Britain and youth in California shaped a path through the studio system, with a complex family relationship that included her sister, Joan Fontaine. Saxon, born in New York to Italian-American parents, entered film as a teen discovery, training steadily and cultivating professional friendships across genre productions. Both kept close ties to colleagues and family, maintaining measured public lives in later years. De Havilland's public contributions included defining performances in classic Hollywood and a landmark legal action that reshaped artist contracts. The California court ruling that bears her name limited studio control, altering the balance between performers and studios in the mid-1940s. Saxon's impact rested on versatile work across westerns, horror, and international productions, including collaborations with Bruce Lee and influential directors in American independent and European cinema. Each sustained credibility by embracing varied roles, navigating changing industry conditions with consistency. Both died on the same July day of 2020. De Havilland died at home in Paris at a very advanced age, concluding a long period of retirement marked by selective public appearances and honors. Saxon died in Tennessee after years of steady work that continued into later life. The coincidence of dates drew attention to the breadth of the studio era and the resilience of genre cinema. De Havilland was interred in Paris at the Cimetière de Passy after services reflecting her European residence and honors. Saxon was buried in California at Valley Oaks Memorial Park in Westlake Village, near communities where he worked and lived. The shared date underscored contrasting legacies, one defined by courtroom change and canonical films, the other by adaptable character work that traveled across continents and formats. Edward Leo Peter McMahon Jr. came from a Marine household and built a long marriage of friendship and work with Johnny Carson that shaped late-night television. Born in the northeastern United States and raised partly in New Jersey, McMahon balanced family responsibilities with broadcasting ambitions, serving in the Marine Corps before returning to radio and television. His decades on air fostered close relationships with crew and recurring guests, and his public persona remained affable and steady through changing formats. McMahon's contributions centered on live television, most visibly as announcer and on-air foil on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. He co-hosted talent showcases, anchored holiday telethons, and endorsed consumer products with a voice and cadence familiar to millions. The role codified a template for sidekick professionalism, keeping the spotlight on the host while maintaining a distinct identity. Away from entertainment, he supported charities and veterans' causes, connecting broadcast celebrity to community service. In late June of 2009, McMahon died in Los Angeles after ongoing health complications. 2 days later, Farrah Fawcett died in Santa Monica after a prolonged illness that she documented to raise awareness, and Michael Jackson died in Los Angeles following an acute medical crisis at home. The clustered timeline created an unusual week of public mourning, where news cycles shifted rapidly from one loss to another. McMahon's funeral mass took place in Beverly Hills, followed by burial at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Cathedral City, near Palm Springs. Fawcett's memorial occurred in Los Angeles, with interment at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. Jackson's public memorial drew a large gathering in downtown Los Angeles, with entombment later at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. The sequence, beginning with McMahon, illustrated how television, film, and music legacies can intersect in a single week, each commemorated in distinct Southern California resting places. David Robert Jones, known as David Bowie, and Alan Sidney Patrick Rickman emerged from working and middle-class London families that valued education and craft. Bowie formed early bands with school friends, later marrying Angela Barnett, and then Iman, maintaining a stable private home life in later years. Rickman trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art after work in graphic design, developing close ties within British theatre and sustaining long partnerships with collaborators from stage to screen. Both kept personal circles small and professional standards exacting. Bowie's public contributions reshaped popular music and performance art through shifting personas, innovative production and visual collaboration. He moved fluidly between rock, experimental sound, and film appearances, influencing international music scenes for decades. Rickman's impact rested on measured, intelligent performances across stage, independent film, and major franchises, balancing villainy, wit, and empathy. Honors acknowledged range and consistency rather than spectacle, and both men approached their work with deliberate preparation and curiosity. In early January of 2016, Bowie died in New York after a private cancer illness that he had kept largely within family and trusted collaborators. 4 days later, Rickman died in London, also after a cancer diagnosis shared only with close friends and relatives. The near coincidence of their deaths emphasized a week in which British cultural figures, long admired worldwide, were mourned across music and film communities. Bowie was cremated in a private arrangement with ashes reportedly scattered in accordance with his wishes, and memorial gatherings occurred informally across cities without a public funeral. Rickman was cremated in London, with subsequent memorial services organized by colleagues from theater and film. The restrained memorial choices matched their preference for privacy, while public tributes underscored how carefully constructed work can resonate far beyond the circumstances of a single week. Doris Marianne Kappelhoff, known as Doris Day, and Thomas Daniel Conway, known as Tim Conway, came from Midwestern families that valued steadiness and community. Day's early life in Ohio shifted after a car accident redirected her from dance towards singing, guided by strong ties to her mother. Conway grew up in the Cleveland area, later serving in the Army, and developed friendships in local radio and television that carried into national work. Both sustained close professional relationships, with colleagues describing reliable teamwork and mutual support on set. Day's public contributions combined chart success, film musicals, romantic comedies, and a later focus on animal welfare. The wholesome screen image masked business acumen and a decisive turn to advocacy with the Doris Day Animal Foundation and rescue efforts shaping her final decades. Conway's impact rested on sketch comedy, built from character invention, timing, and ensemble play, first in local broadcasts, then on national variety television. He became a pillar of collaborative comedy, creating recurring figures and supporting performances that enriched shows led by others. In mid-May of 2019, Day died in Carmel Valley after a long period of retirement from acting and singing. The next day, Conway died in Los Angeles after health complications that followed a period of cognitive decline. Their nearly consecutive departures linked distinct strands of American entertainment, one defined by mid-century film and song, the other by late 20th century television comedy. Day chose no public funeral, memorial, or grave marker, reflecting a preference for privacy and directing support toward animal causes. Conway's funeral services were held in the Catholic tradition, with interment at a Los Angeles area cemetery. The pairing underscored how contrasting public images, a sunlit film persona, and a core of television characters can conclude within the same week, remembered through charitable legacies and the enduring laughter of recorded sketch work. Frederick Charles Willard and Gerald Isaac Stiller built long marriages and creative partnerships that anchored their lives in comedy. Willard's early years included service in the Army and formative improvisation at Second City and Ace Trucking Company, where ensemble trust shaped his style. Stiller, born in New York, met Ann Mira in the 1950s, forming Stiller and Mira, a durable act that blended domestic life with stage work. Their families remained close to the business, with Stiller later collaborating with his son Ben, and Willard sustaining friendships across improvisational troupes and mock documentary ensembles. Willard's public contributions centered on improvisational film and television, especially the mock documentary features that showcased understated confidence and precise timing. He became a reliable presence in guest roles on sitcoms and late-night programs, enlivening scenes with genial authority. Stiller's impact rested on character comedy that mined exasperation and affection, from early variety stages to prominent sitcoms. He portrayed memorable recurring roles that defined a mode of urban humor, while continuing stage work and voice performances late in life. In mid-May of 2020, Stiller died in New York of natural causes at home, announced by his family. 4 days later, Willard died in Los Angeles, also of natural causes, after a late career run that included recurring television appearances. The close timing prompted affectionate retrospectives that highlighted how each man elevated ensemble comedy without seeking the center of attention. Stiller was interred at a New York area cemetery following private family services, with public tributes from collaborators spanning decades. Willard was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles after quiet arrangements consistent with his modest public posture. Their nearly adjacent passings linked East Coast and West Coast traditions in American comedy, uniting vaudeville-rooted timing with improvisational subtlety and memorial recollection. Isur Danielovich, known professionally as Kirk Douglas, and Conrad Robert Falk, known as Robert Conrad, came from working families and built reputations for determination and physical commitment. Douglas's early life in New York included close ties to his mother and sisters, and later a long marriage to Ann Bidens that anchored philanthropic work. Conrad grew up in Chicago with a focus on athletics and performance, forming durable professional friendships with stunt coordinators and television crews who supported his demanding action roles. Both men valued discipline, mentoring younger performers, and remaining active in industry circles late in life. Douglas's public contributions spanned studio-era epics and independent productions that challenged norms, including advocacy for credited screenwriters during a period of blacklisting. He became a symbol of star-driven autonomy, producing and selecting projects that emphasized moral conflict and resilience. Conrad's impact rested on action-oriented television, most notably a 19th-century-themed adventure series that showcased his own stunts, shaping expectations for physical authenticity on network shows. He carried that ethos into later roles and hosting, reinforcing a hands-on standard for television action. Douglas died in early February of 2020 in Los Angeles after a long life marked by recovery from a serious mid-90s health event and decades of charitable activity. 3 days later, Conrad died in Malibu after years of reduced public appearances. Their passings, close in date, drew attention to different branches of American screen history, one rooted in mid-century cinema and producer agency, the other in kinetic television storytelling. Douglas was interred at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery after services that emphasized family and philanthropy, with later tributes at institutions he supported. Conrad was laid to rest at a Southern California cemetery following private family arrangements. The proximity of their deaths linked the studio era's emblematic toughness with network television's action craft, memorialized in Los Angeles, where both men spent their most active years. Samuel George Davis Jr. and James Maury Henson came from supportive families that encouraged performance and invention, setting them on paths that combined discipline with curiosity. Davis grew up within a touring vaudeville unit led by his father and Will Maston, creating a lifelong professional family that shaped his work ethic and style. Henson developed creative partnerships in high school and college that evolved into a stable team of performers and builders, including long-standing collaborations with Frank Oz and a dedicated workshop community. Both maintained demanding schedules balanced by close-knit crews who shared credit and responsibility. Davis's public contributions encompassed stage, screen, recordings, and live television, blending dance, comedy, and song in a versatile template for modern variety entertainers. He broke barriers in Las Vegas and on network television, becoming a visible figure in civil rights advocacy and in efforts to open venues to integrated casts and audiences. Henson's impact rested on character creation and world building that joined education with humor, shaping children's television and family entertainment through innovative puppetry, music, and design. His projects combined craft precision with gentle wit, setting standards adopted by international co-productions. Both died on the same May Day of 1990. Davis died in Los Angeles after a period of treatment for cancer, surrounded by longtime friends and family from the Will Maston Circle and Rat Pack colleagues. Henson died in New York after a sudden medical crisis that developed rapidly, prompting shock among collaborators and viewers who had followed his work for decades. The coincidence of the date linked two different branches of American popular culture, one rooted in live performance, the other in imaginative educational media. Davis's funeral at a Los Angeles church drew entertainers from multiple eras, with burial at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale near other figures from mid-century entertainment. Henson's memorial services in New York and later in London encouraged colorful attire and music, reflecting the inclusive spirit of his creations, with cremation and private family arrangements. The shared day underlined how variety stage tradition and gentle educational storytelling both shaped national memory, each commemorated through communities built across years of rehearsal, touring, and workshop invention. Jonathan Southworth Ritter and J.R., known as Johnny Cash, came from families that valued faith, work, and music, shaping parallel commitments to craft and community. Ritter grew up in Southern California as the son of actor and singer Tex Ritter, absorbing stage discipline and television pacing while developing his own comedic sensibility. Cash was raised in an Arkansas farming family that sang together, later forming lifelong partnerships with musicians and with June Carter, whose collaboration and marriage anchored his personal and professional life. Each man sustained close ties to colleagues, relying on trusted bands and ensembles that supported touring and production. Ritter's public contributions centered on television comedy with physical precision, ensemble timing, and a capacity for warmth that carried into film and stage roles. He expanded into dramatic parts while remaining a reliable lead for network series, encouraging writers and younger performers with a collaborative approach. Cash's impact rested on a baritone voice and songwriting that addressed work, faith, loss, and endurance, crossing country, folk, and rock audiences. He recorded landmark live albums, supported prison outreach through performances, and returned late in life with stripped-down interpretations that renewed his influence. In early September of 2003, Ritter experienced an acute medical emergency on a studio set in Burbank and died shortly afterward at a nearby hospital. The next day, Cash died in Nashville after a long period of health struggles that followed the death of June Carter earlier that year. The consecutive losses connected television comedy and American roots music within a single week, prompting tributes across broadcast and radio networks. Ritter was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills following services that emphasized family and his mentorship of colleagues. Cash was buried at Hendersonville Memory Gardens in Tennessee after a large memorial attended by musicians, friends, and community members from decades of touring. The one-day interval linked different traditions of performance, one built on studio audiences and sitcom craft, the other on stages from prisons to concert halls, each remembered through places that sustained their work. Heath Andrew Ledger and Suzanne Pleshette entered the industry from different generations and training paths. Yet both sustained close working relationships that shaped steady careers. Ledger grew up in Western Australia, forming early bonds with school friends who joined him in short films and early roles, then built a circle of collaborators in Los Angeles and New York. Pleshette, a New Yorker by birth, trained for the stage and moved fluidly between theater and screen, maintaining friendships with directors and co-stars across decades. Each valued preparation and professionalism, earning reputations for reliability within demanding productions. Ledger's public contributions included a rapid progression from teen roles to complex performances in independent and studio films. He chose parts that balanced sensitivity and volatility, earning wide recognition for range and commitment. Pleshette became a familiar presence in film and on television, later defining a smart, dry comedic voice on a long-running sitcom that showcased her timing and restraint. Both navigated the fluctuations of public attention with measured interviews and an emphasis on work over celebrity. In January of 2008, Pleshette died in Los Angeles after ongoing health complications that had followed earlier treatment, with tributes noting her resilience and return to work. 3 days later, Ledger died in New York after a drug-related incident involving prescription medications, drawing an intense media response and a re-evaluation of his recent work and schedule. The close timing connected distinct eras, pairing a veteran performer's long arc with a younger actor's brief but striking body of films. Pleshette was interred at Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles after services that reflected her ties to the city's stage and television communities. Ledger's remains were flown to Perth, with a memorial in Los Angeles and a funeral in Western Australia, followed by burial at Karrakatta Cemetery near family. The proximity of their deaths highlighted how television tradition and contemporary film intensity share a common respect for craft, marked in cemeteries that reflect the cities central to their lives. George Orson Welles and Yul Brynner, known as Yul Brynner, built careers that depended on loyal ensembles, technical craftspeople, and family partnerships that supported demanding schedules. Welles formed lasting collaborations with Mercury Theatre colleagues, cinematographers, and editors who embraced experimentation in sound and image. Brynner, born to a cosmopolitan family with ties across Europe and Asia, developed close working relationships in New York theater and in Hollywood, with associates who supported his stage regimen and screen discipline. Each man balanced public profiles with private circles that sustained long periods of international travel and work. Welles's public contributions transformed 20th century media through innovative radio, independent film production, and a director's approach to acting that emphasized voice, framing, and authorship. He advanced non-linear storytelling, deep-focused cinematography, and location experimentation that influenced generations of filmmakers. Brynner's impact rested on a commanding stage and screen presence, most famously in a long-running musical role that he returned to for decades, and in film performances that projected authority with minimal yet precise movement. Both navigated studio constraints by leveraging acclaim, awards, and international opportunities. In early October of 1985, Welles died in Los Angeles at home after an evening of work that reflected his lifelong productivity. The same day, Brenner died in New York after a long illness treated privately while he continued performing in his signature stage role during later years. The coincidence of the date led news outlets to juxtapose a modernist director-actor with a minimalist star whose bearing defined mid-century spectacle. Wells was cremated, with ashes later interred on a friend's estate in Spain after a small ceremony that honored his European ties and independent spirit. Brenner was buried at St. Robert Churchyard in La Touraine, France, following services that reflected his family's preference for privacy and his international life. The shared day linked distinct modes of presence, one rooted in authorship and technical innovation, the other in disciplined performance economy, each remembered at sites far from Hollywood, yet central to their identities. Jeanette Helen Morrison, known as Janet Leigh, and Jacob Rodney Cohen, known as Rodney Dangerfield, came from modest families and built careers through persistence and supportive partnerships. Leigh's early marriage to Tony Curtis placed her within a high-profile Hollywood circle while she maintained friendships with directors and co-stars who valued her preparation. Dangerfield balanced family responsibilities with long stretches outside show business, later returning with the help of club owners and writers who recognized his precision and cadence. Both cultivated reputations for professionalism that anchored ensembles across film and stage. Leigh's public contributions ranged from studio-era musicals and noirs to a pivotal thriller performance that redefined vulnerability and audience expectation. She transitioned to character roles and writing, sustaining visibility through television movies and memoirs that documented craft and collaboration. Dangerfield's impact rested on stand-up built from compact observational jokes delivered with a self-deprecating persona, then extended into film comedies where his timing and rhythm shaped scenes. He mentored younger comedians, opened doors at his own club, and appeared on late-night programs that amplified his reach. In early October of 2004, Leigh died in Los Angeles after a period of health complications in later life. 2 days later, Dangerfield died in Los Angeles following cardiac issues that were preceded by multiple procedures and hospitalizations. The close dates highlighted parallel endurance, one in classic and television films, the other on stages and comedy sets that defined late 20th century humor. Leigh was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, near colleagues from the studio and television eras. Dangerfield was interred at Pierce Brothers Valley Oaks Memorial Park in Westlake Village, with a headstone inscription reflecting his comic voice, noted by visitors and fans. Their near-concurrent passings connected Hitchcock-linked screen history to stand-up's club-to-screen pipeline, each remembered in Southern California cemeteries that collect overlapping chapters of entertainment memory. Ronald Laibman and René Murat Auberjonois built respected reputations through stage discipline, close ensembles, and long marriages that steadied demanding schedules. Laibman, a New Yorker, trained for theater and formed durable partnerships with acting teachers, castmates, and his spouse, actress Jessica Walter, with whom he shared projects and community ties. Auberjonois, born in New York to a family with European cultural roots, grew up partly abroad and within artistic circles, later marrying Judith Mahalyi and raising a family active in the arts. Both men mentored younger performers and maintained cordial relationships with directors who valued precision. Laibman's public contributions spanned Broadway, film, and television, highlighted by a Tony Award for a solo stage portrayal and memorable television guest roles that displayed sharp comedic timing. He shifted between intense drama and dry humor, carrying a distinctive voice into character parts that contrasted with leading stage work. Auberjonois' impact rested on versatility across theater, opera, film, and television, with signature roles that required vocal control, prosthetic performance, and refined stillness. He anchored long-running series, supported animation with voice acting, and returned to the stage between screen commitments. In early December of 2019, Laibman died in New York after health complications noted by family and colleagues. 2 days later, Auberjonois died in Los Angeles after a cancer illness managed privately within his family and professional circle. The close timing drew attention to a generation of classically trained actors who carried stagecraft into television ensembles and genre storytelling. Laibman was memorialized in New York theater settings, with remembrances that emphasized his range and partnership with Jessica Walter, and interment in the New York area. Auberjonois was remembered at services in Southern California with cremation and private family arrangements, and tributes from theater companies and science fiction communities. Their near-concurrent passings highlighted how stage-rooted technique sustained careers across mediums, reflected in memorials that honored both New York theater tradition and Los Angeles screen communities. Harry Dean Stanton and Bernard Terry Casey each relied on circles of friends and colleagues who supported late-career momentum. Stanton, raised in Kentucky, maintained enduring friendships with musicians and directors who valued his restraint and presence, including collaborators from independent cinema and longtime acquaintances in Los Angeles music bars. Casey, born in West Virginia and raised partly in Ohio, fostered ties from college athletics to film sets, carrying lessons from team sports into ensemble acting. Both men kept low-key personal lives, emphasizing steady work and private loyalty. Stanton's public contributions centered on character roles that anchored films with lived-in authenticity, from road narratives to science fiction and small-town dramas. He worked with directors who prized minimalism, allowing gesture and silence to carry meaning, and he sustained a parallel life as a singer with a repertoire of traditional songs. Casey transitioned from professional football to acting, building a career in film and television that embraced authority figures, mentors, and understated comic roles. He also painted and wrote poetry, adding a quiet, multidisciplinary dimension to his public image. In mid-September of 2017, Stanton died in Los Angeles after a long life of continuous work that included a final leading role released that year. 4 days later, Casey died in Los Angeles after a brief illness reported by family. The close timing linked a quintessential American character actor with an athlete-turned-performer who broadened expectations for post-sports careers in Hollywood. Stanton was interred at Lexington Cemetery in Kentucky after services that reflected his ties to home and to musicians who had performed with him. Casey was cremated, with private family arrangements and tributes from sports and film communities noting his range and dignity. Their near-concurrent passings highlighted different routes into screen work, one through decades of understated craft, the other through a successful reinvention that left a steady record across genres. Shirley Temple Black and Isaac Sidney, known as Sid Caesar, each built family-centered lives that steadied demanding public schedules. Temple grew up in California with parents who managed her early career, later marrying Charles Alden Black, whose naval and business experience supported her transition from entertainment to public service. Caesar, born in New York to immigrant parents, married Florence Levy, a lifelong partner who helped navigate television pressures and touring demands. Both maintained trusted circles of writers, actors, and advisors who sustained long careers and later reinventions. Temple's public contributions began with child stardom that stabilized studio finances during the 1930s, then shifted toward diplomacy. She served as United States delegate and ambassador, focusing on protocol and regional relations, and spoke publicly about health issues to encourage research and early detection. Caesar's impact rested on live television sketch comedy that emphasized language play, physical precision, and ensemble work with writers who later shaped American film and television. His programs demonstrated how rehearsal and risk could produce tightly structured, innovative comedy. In early February of 2014, Temple died at home in California after a long post-entertainment life that included civic work and corporate service. 2 days later, Caesar died in the Los Angeles area after years of reduced public appearances, remembered by generations of comedians and writers he had mentored. The close dates highlighted a bridge from studio-era celebrity to diplomatic service, and from early live television to modern sketch traditions. Temple was interred at Alta Mesa Memorial Park in Palo Alto after private family services, with public tributes noting her diplomatic roles and philanthropic efforts. Caesar was buried at Mount Sinai Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles, following services attended by colleagues from television and comedy writing rooms. Their near-concurrent passings connected two pillars of American popular culture: one who moved from screen to embassy, the other who set a benchmark for live television craft that continues to inform contemporary comedy.